What is it like to be a bat? It's one of the most famous questions in contemporary philosophy, put forward by the philosopher Thomas Nagel in his 1974 essay, What is it like to be a bat? Because when we think about consciousness, it's possible that the only thing we can really say is that there is something it is like to be a bat. And that thing, whether for a bat or a lion or a swan or a human, is consciousness. And this is a philosophical idea that the Peripheral, the new streaming show from Amazon Prime, calls out to not just once, but twice in its first episode.
It's like trying to imagine myself inside a lion.
The first time when one character says to another, I can't imagine what it's like to be inside you. It's like imagining what it would be like to be inside a lion. And then that character, Flynn Fisher, on her first journey into the virtual world and simulation at the heart of the Peripheral, says this when she is inside her brother, Burton Fisher.
I was just trying to imagine what it must be like to be you. I can't. You're just too beautiful. It's like trying to imagine myself inside a swan.
And she uses the line, you're too beautiful. I can't imagine what it would be like to be inside you. It would be like being inside a swan. These are some indications that the Peripheral is a little bit more than we initially see on the surface, even though that surface is, even in the first episode, quite complicated. And if we want to understand what's happening in the Peripheral, there is one pivotal scene which gives us a very important clue to the true complexity of this story. A tiny little bit of context for those of you who aren't aware of it coming into the television show. The Peripheral was originally a science fiction novel published by the great William Gibson, undoubtedly one of the greatest science fiction novelists alive today. He became famous for Neuromancer. He is the father of cyberpunk. And The Peripheral is the first novel in his latest trilogy. It was picked up by Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan, brother of Chris Nolan, the top Hollywood science fiction movie director, and Lisa and Jonathan were the showrunners of Westworld. So this is from quite a great science fiction pedigree, but neither Lisa Joy or Jonathan Nolan are showrunning The Peripheral. That is Scott B. Smith, and we have to think that this is Scott B. Smith's baby. And whatever happens in The Peripheral, whilst it's clearly related to the William Gibson novel, may depart from it substantially and might even be more interesting, or at the least more complex. 4, 3, 2, 1. Episode 1 of The Peripheral begins with a prologue where we have two people who appear to be something like immortal entities. We can make that guess from their discussion of soul.
I went for 6 months without shoes once. Remember? Amazing how the soles of one's feet can toughen up or go soft, depending on their environment. It's like the other sort of soul.
Our first clue that there is more than there seems on the surface of this story. We are then thrown into what appear to be, on one level, two timelines. The first is America, the Blue Ridge Mountains in 2033, a near future timeline. And novelist William Gibson gives us a number of kind of standard tropes of near future science fiction. One, this is a future in which people play video games for money, and your survival can depend on how good you are at playing video games. The second trope is the idea that you are recruited for a special mission because you have done particularly well, in this case reached level 108 in a very particular video game, and on the basis of that success you are given an opportunity to test out a brand new technology. This is also a standard trope of William Gibson's storytelling. Many of his earlier books and stories feature a rogue technology, something like a set of virtual light glasses that have escaped into the world, and in the words of William Gibson's famous diktat, the street finds its own uses for technology. In this case, the technology is an augmented reality headset that sends Flynn Fisher into a deeply immersive world, which appears to be our second timeline, London 2099. We're given hints that this is an emptier London. We see fewer people on the streets. It's also a much higher level of technology. And this is the simulated world that Flynn Fisher, through her brother Burton Fisher's online persona, is tempted to enter over and over again. But what's really happening under the complicated surface level of William Gibson and Scott B. Smith's The Peripheral? There is a clue in a single scene, a series of establishing shots before we enter the Blue Ridge Mountains of 2033. We see the home of Flynn and Burton Fisher as an architectural white model. We have an establishing shot of a small section of forest with the main house where their sick mother lives. We see Burton Fisher's trailer, and then we see a hand placing architectural human models into the scene. This is a very clear hint that there is even more to The Peripheral than we initially might have thought. Not only do we have a simulated world in 2099, but William Gibson and Scott B. Smith are suggesting to us that the world of Blue Ridge Mountains 2033 is also a simulation.
It ain't real. I'm not gonna not. This here's the only world that I got.
And here we're being asked to think about the question of what is reality and what is simulation, and is there really a difference between the two? An idea that is currently emerging from science fiction and also in the world of philosophy, with a philosopher like David Chalmers and his book from 2022, Reality Plus, where Chalmers makes the argument that as simulations become more and more complex, we're posed with the question of whether there is any difference between reality and simulation, or is reality only a kind of simulation? And I think this is where we are going with The Peripheral, an exploration of the relationship between reality and simulation, and the question of what it is like to be a consciousness within a simulation. This is why we have the call out to the line from Thomas Nagel. What is it like to be a bat? What is it like to be inside a lion, to be inside a swan? What is it like to be Flynn Fisher within her brother, within a simulated world, coming from a world that might also be simulated? We're only one episode into The Peripheral. I don't know how much further they will explore this, but they've definitely raised the questions in the first episode. This is exciting. These are core, high-level science fiction ideas. It's great to see them on television. It's great to have an adaptation of William Gibson. I hope that, unlike the earlier show Westworld from Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan, that The Peripheral is able to fully explore these fascinating philosophical questions of reality and simulation and consciousness. And I'm excited to see where that will take us. My name is Damien Water. If you've enjoyed this, I'm going to try and do more critique episodes on the Peripheral. And you can also follow my series here on the YouTube channel, Writing the 21st Century Myth, where I deep dive into some of the most famous science fiction storytelling from 2001: A Space Odyssey to Blade Runner. Thank you very much. Goodbye.